All right, this is a classic short story. You probably read this in ninth grade. This is The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. I don't speak French. I'm not going to try to speak French. But I don't like saying his name. I mean, I could be a real Texan and say his name is Guy de Maupassant. But I'm pretty sure it's a little bit more like Guy de Maupassant. Okay, story written in 1884. She's one of those pretty and charming women. Take two. She's one of those pretty and charming women, born as if by an error of destiny into a family of clerks and copyists. She had no dowry, no prospects, no way of getting known, courted, loved, married by a rich and distinguished man. She finally settled for a marriage with a minor clerk at the Ministry of Education. Hey. She was a simple person without the money to dress well, but she was as unhappy as if she had gone through bankruptcy, for women have neither rank nor race. In place of high birth or important family connections, she can rely only on her beauty, their grace, and their charm. Their inborn finesse, their elegant tastes, their engaging personalities, which are their only power, make working class women the equals of the grandest ladies. She suffered constantly, feeling herself destined for all delicacies and luxuries. She suffered because of her grim apartment with its drab walls, threadbare furniture, ugly curtains. All such things which most women in her situation would not even have noticed tortured her and filled her with despair. The sight of the young country girl who did her simple housework awakened in her only a sense of desolation and lost hopes. She daydreamed of large, silent anterooms decorated with oriental tapestries and lighted by high bronze floor lamps, with two elegant valets and short culottes dozing in large armchairs under the effects of forced air heaters. She imagined large drawing rooms draped in the most expensive silks, with fine end tables on which were placed knickknacks of inestimable value. She dreamed of the perfume and dainty private rooms, which were designed only for intimate tete-a-tetes for the closest friends, who, because of their achievements and fame, would make her the envy of all other women. When she sat down to dinner at her round little table covered with a cloth that had not been washed for 3 days, in front of her husband, and who opened the kettle while declaring ecstatically, "Oh, good old beef stew! I don't know anything better." She dreamed of expensive banquets with shining place settings and wall hangings portraying ancient heroes and exotic birds in an enchanted forest. She imagined a gourmet prepared main course carried on the most exquisite trays and served on the most beautiful dishes with whispered gallantries which she would hear with a sphinx like smile as she dined on the pink meat of a trout or the delicate wing of a quail. She had no decent dresses, no jewels, nothing. She loved nothing but these. She believed herself born only for these. She burned with the desire to please, to be envied, to be attractive and sought after. She had a rich friend, a comrade from convent days, whom she did not want to see any more because she suffered so much when she returned home. She would weep for the entire day afterwards with sorrow, regret, despair, and misery. Well, one evening her husband came home glowing and carrying a large envelope. "Here," he said, "this is something for you." She quickly tore open the envelope and took out a card engraved with these words: "The Chancellor of Education and Mrs. George Ramponneau request that Mr. and Mrs. Loisel do them the honor of coming to dinner at the Ministry of Education on the evening of January 8th. Instead of being delighted as her husband had hoped, she threw the invitation spitefully on the table, muttering, 'What do you expect me to do with this?' But, honey, I thought you'd be glad. You never get to go out, and this is a special occasion. I had a lot of trouble getting this invitation. Everyone wants one. The demand is high, and not many clerks get invited. Everyone important will be there.' She looked at him angrily and stated impatiently, 'What do you want me to wear to go there?' He had not thought of that. He stammered, but your theater dress, that seems nice to me.' He stopped, amazed and bewildered, as if his wife began to cry. Large tears fell slowly from the corners of her eyes to her mouth. He said falteringly, 'What's wrong? What's the matter?' But with a strong effort she had recovered, and she answered calmly as she wiped her damp cheeks, 'Nothing, except that I have nothing to wear and therefore can't go to the party. Give your invitation to someone else at the office whose wife will have nicer clothes than mine. Distressed, he responded, "Oh, all right, Mathilde. How much would a new dress cost? Something you could use at other times, but not anything fancy." She thought for a few moments, adding things up and thinking also of an amount that she could ask without getting an immediate refusal and a frightened outcry from the frugal clerk. Finally, she responded tentatively, "I don't know exactly, but it seems to me that I could get by on 400 francs." He blanched slightly at this, because he had set aside just that amount to buy a shotgun for Sunday lark hunts the next summer with a few friends in the plain of Nanterre. However, he said, "All right, you've got 400 francs, but make it a pretty dress." As the day of the party grew near, Mrs. Loisel seemed sad, uneasy, anxious, even though her gown was all ready. One evening, her husband said to her, "What's the matter? You've been acting funny for several days." She answered, "It's awful, but I don't have any jewels to wear, not a single gem, nothing to dress up my outfit. I'll look like a beggar. I'd almost rather not go to the party." He responded, "You can wear a corsage of cut flowers. This year it's all the rage. For only 10 francs you can get 2 or 3 gorgeous roses." She was not convinced. "No, there's nothing more humiliating than looking shabby in the company of rich women." But her husband exclaimed, "God, but you're silly. Go to your friend Mrs. Forcier and ask her to lend you some jewelry. You know her well enough to do that." She uttered a cry of joy. "That's right. I hadn't thought of that." The next day she went to her friend's house and described her problem. Mrs. Forcier went to her mirrored wardrobe, took out a large jewel box, opened it, and said to Mrs. Loisel, "Choose, my dear." She saw bracelets, then a pearl necklace, then a Venetian cross of finely worked gold and gems. She tried on the jewelry in front of a mirror and hesitated, unable to make up her mind about each one. She kept asking, "Do you have anything else?" "Certainly. Look to your heart's content. I don't know what you'd like best." Suddenly, she found a superb diamond necklace in a black satin box, and her heart throbbed with desire for it. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She fastened it around her neck, watched it gleam at her throat, and looked at herself ecstatically. Did she ask, haltingly and anxiously, "Could you lend me this? Nothing but this?" "Why, yes, certainly." She jumped up, hugged her friend joyfully, then hurried away with her treasure. The day of the party came. Mrs. Loisel was a success. She was prettier than anyone else, stylish, graceful, smiling, and wild with joy. All the men saw her, asked her name, sought to be introduced. All the important administrators stood in line to waltz with her. The chancellor himself eyed her. She danced joyfully, passionately, intoxicated with pleasure, thinking of nothing but the moment and the triumph of her beauty and the glory of her success, on cloud 9 with happiness made up of all admiration, of all the aroused desire, of this victory so complete and so sweet to the heart of any woman. She did not leave till 4 o'clock in the morning. Her husband, since midnight, had been sleeping in a little empty room where 3 other men whose wives had also been enjoying themselves. He threw over her shoulders the shawl that he had brought for the trip home, a modest everyday wrap, the poverty of which contrasted sharply with the elegance of her evening gown. She felt it and hurried away to avoid being noticed by the other women who luxuriated in rich furs. Loisel tried to hold back. "Wait a minute. You'll catch cold outdoors. I'll call a cab." But she paid no attention and hurried down the stairs. When they reached the street, they found no carriages. They began to look for one, shouting at cabmen passing by in a distance. They walked toward the scene, desperate, shivering. Finally, on a quay, they found one of those old night-going buggies that are seen in Paris only after dark, as if they were ashamed of their wretched appearance in daylight. It took them to their door on the Street of Martyrs, and they sadly climbed the stairs to their flat. For her, it was finished. As for him, he could think only that he had to begin work at the Ministry of Education at 10 o'clock. She took a shawl off her shoulders in front of the mirror to see herself once more in her glory. Suddenly she cried out. The necklace was no longer around her neck. Her husband, already half undressed, asked, "What's wrong?" She turned toward him frantically. I no longer have Miss Forcier's necklace." He stood up bewildered. "What? How? It's not possible." They looked in the folds of the gown, and the folds of the shawl, and the pockets everywhere. They found nothing. He asked, "You're sure you still had it on when you left the party?" "Yes, I checked in the vestibule of the ministry." "But if you'd lost it in the street, we would have heard it fall. It must be in the cab." "Yes, probably. Did you notice the number?" "No, I didn't see it." "No." Overwhelmed, they looked at each other. Finally, Roselle got dressed again. "I'm going to go out to retrace our steps." Excuse me. "I'm going to go out to retrace our steps," he said, "to see if I can find the necklace that way." And he went out. She stayed in her evening gown without the energy to get ready for bed, stretched out in a chair, drained of strength and thought. Her husband came back at about 7 o'clock. He found nothing. He went to police headquarters and to the newspapers to announce a reward. He went to the small cab companies and finally followed up with the slightest hopeful lead. And finally, he followed up even the slightest hopeful lead. She waited the entire day in the same enervated state in the face of this frightful disaster. Marcel came back in the evening, his face pale and haggard. He found nothing. "You'll have to write your friend," he said, "that you broke a clasp on her necklace and that you're having it fixed. That'll give us time to look around." She wrote as he dictated. By the end of the week, they had lost all hope. Marcel, looking 5 years older, declared, "I'll have to see about replacing the jewels." The next day, they took the case which had contained the necklace and went to the jeweler whose name was inside. He looked at his books. "I wasn't the one, madame, who sold the necklace. I only made the case." Then they went from jeweler to jeweler, searching for a necklace like the other one, racking their memories, both of them sick with worry and anguish. In a shop in the Palais Royal, they found a necklace of diamonds that seemed to them exactly like the one they were looking for. It was priced at 40,000 francs. They could buy it for 36,000. They got the jeweler to promise not to sell it for 3 days. They made an arrangement that he would buy it back for 34,000 francs if the original was recovered before the end of February. Marcel had saved 18,000 francs that his father had left him. He would have to borrow the rest. He borrowed, asking 1,000 francs from one, 500 from another, 5 louis here, 3 louis there. He wrote promissory notes, undertook ruinous obligations, did business with finance companies and the whole tribe of loan sharks. He compromised himself for the remainder of his days, risked his signature without knowing whether he would be able to honor it, and terrified by anguish over the future, by the black misery that was about to descend on him, by the prospect of all kinds of physical deprivations and moral tortures, he went to get the new necklace and put down 36,000 francs on the jeweler's counter. Mrs. Loisel took the necklace back to Mrs. Forestier, who said with an offended tone, "You should have brought it back sooner. I might have needed it." She did not open the case, as her friend feared she might. If she had noticed the substitution, what would she have thought? What would she have said? Would she not have taken her for a thief? Mrs. Loisel soon discovered the horrible life of the needy. She did her share, however, completely heroically. That horrifying debt had to be paid. She would pay. They dismissed the maid. They changed their address. They rented an attic flat. She learned to do the heavy housework, dirty kitchen jobs. She washed the dishes, wearing away her manicured fingernails on greasy pots and encrusted baking dishes. She hand-washed dirty linen, shirts, and dish towels that she hung out on the line to dry. Each morning she took the garbage down to the street, and she carried up water, stopping at each floor to catch her breath. And dressed in cheap house dresses, she went to the fruit dealer, the grocer, the butcher's with her basket under her arms, haggling, insulting, defending her measly cash penny by penny. They had to make installment payments every month and to buy more time to refinance loans. The husband worked evenings to make fair copies of tradesmen's accounts, and late into the night he made copies at 5 cents a page. And this life lasted 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they had paid back everything, including the extra charges imposed by the loan sharks and the accumulation of compound interest. Mrs. Loisel looked old now. She had become the strong, hard, and rude woman of poor husbands, of poor households. Her hair unkempt with uneven skirts and rough red hands, she spoke loudly, washed floors with large buckets of water. But sometimes, when her husband was at work, she sat down near the window and she dreamed of that evening so long ago, of that party where she'd been so beautiful and so admired. What would life have been like if she had not lost that necklace? Who knows? Who knows? Life is so peculiar, so uncertain. How little a thing it takes to destroy you or to save you. Well, one Sunday, when she had gone for a stroll along the Champs-Élysées to relax with the cares of the week, she suddenly noticed a woman walking with a child. It was Mrs. Forestier, still youthful, still beautiful, still attractive. Mrs. Loisel felt moved. Would she speak to her? Yes, certainly. And now that she had paid, she could tell all. Why not? She walked closer. Hello, Jean. The other gave no sign of recognition and was astonished to be addressed so familiarly by this working-class woman. She stammered, But, madame, I don't know. You must have made a mistake. No, I'm Mathilde Loisel. Her friend cried out, Oh, my poor Mathilde, you've changed so much. Yes, I've had some tough times since I saw you last. In fact, hardships, and all because of you. Of me? How so? You remember the diamond necklace that you lent me to go to that party at the Ministry of Education? Yes, what then? Well, I lost it. How? Since you gave it back to me. I returned another exactly like it. And for 10 years we've been paying for it. You understand this wasn't easy for us who have nothing. Finally it's over, and I'm damned glad. Mrs. Forestier stopped her. You say that you bought a necklace to replace mine? Yes, you didn't notice it, eh? It was exactly like yours. And she smiled with proud and childish joy. But Mrs. Forestier, deeply moved, took both her hands. Oh, my poor Mathilde. But mine was only costume jewelry. At most, it was worth only 500 francs. Oh, I love that story. It's so good for so many reasons. Hope you enjoyed that. Love you dearly. And if you want, I've got other videos of short stories and poems and 1984. So check those out.